Hello, everyone. Please take your seats. We're going to get started. We're, if we can ask, if we can ask everyone that is staying for this panel to please take their seats. And just to let you know, we're going to be having interpretation, and we're going to be getting interpretation equipment soon. So we might be interrupted a little bit for the interpretation. But it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the Indigenous Peoples' knowledge on regenerative practices, agroecology, and food systems. This is a collaboration between International Funders for Indigenous Peoples and the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities. Let me just take a little moment before I introduce the panel just to say that we have been all following different conversations at this COP. And one of the conversations that is critical for climate and climate resilience is the topic of food systems. It is in this context that we have this incredible panel who will be sharing with you the importance and the role of indigenous food systems and why are they so critical for the conversations of climate resiliency and climate change. So with that, let me just introduce the panel. And do I point this? Where do I point this to? If someone could please help me with the slides. Thank you. So we will be hearing from Dr. Dhrupa Chowdhury, whose areas of interest are mountain agriculture, particularly indigenous food systems. Dr. Chowdhury is with the International Panel of Advisors for the Indigenous Peoples Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty, or known as TIP for its acronyms. We'll also be hearing from Marisela Fernandez. Next. Marisela Fernandez is president of the Cabata Conana Women's Association, which focuses on recovery on ancestral Cabecar agricultural practices. Marisela is an indigenous Cabecar Costa Rican. She will be speaking in Spanish. We will also hear from Cristiane Pancararu, a representative of the women's movement of the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities. Cristiana is from the Pacararu peoples of Brazil, and she will be speaking in Portuguese. We will also have, we're very also fortunate to have Pirawan Wagnisitaparon, who is a Karen indigenous woman from Chiang Mai, Thailand, and she is currently the environmental officer at Asia Indigenous Peoples PAC. And last but not least, we will hear from Clay Colombo, who is an enrolled citizen on the Sicango Lakota Oyate and serves as the CEO for the Sicango Corporation, which is a place-based ecosystem that is revitalizing the economy and culture of the Sicango Nation. So with that, I just want to check with Andrea, do we have the equipment? Okay. So let me just start by opening the panel by inviting both Cristiana and Cristiana and Dr. Dhrupa Chowdhury and Clay to perhaps open the conversation by sharing with the audience how are indigenous peoples' food systems different to mainstream food and agricultural practices, And why is it so critical that the mainstream global systems of agriculture shift their approaches to producing food? Dr. Chaudhry, please.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you. It's working. First, thanks for giving us the opportunity and the floor to talk about indigenous food systems. I think the difference starts at several levels in terms of how indigenous people's food systems are perceived, the practices, and the philosophy on which these are based. Let me elaborate. When you talk about perceptions, contemporary systems are basically cultivated systems, and you have the crops in there. For the indigenous food systems, however, it includes more than just the cultivated systems. And you have agricultural fields, but also natural systems such as fallows and forests and aquatic systems, which are all part of the indigenous food system. When we look at crops, there's a diversity between and also within crops. And as you look at an indigenous food system landscape, you find a mosaic of different ecosystems or subsystems which are there. In regard to the practice, when you look at the management approaches, indigenous people, unlike contemporary modern agriculture, nurture and harness biological processes of nature, not dependent on external inputs. And there is an interconnectivity between these subsystems for the management of soil, of water, of the resources which are there. When we look at the philosophy, and also, sorry, in the practice there's one more point, which is in regard to the access frameworks. Most indigenous food systems are based or work on common property resources which ensure universal access to the members. And therefore, this brings about tenurial security. All these, whether it's the perception or the practice, are based on a philosophy which you'll appreciate is holistic and not reductionist. That's a very important difference between the two. But there is also underlying important worldview, which is the philosophy based on indigenous food systems and people nurture nature because nature nurtures them. And that is underlying the foundation of the harmonious relationship with nature. This also reflects the values of sharing and caring. And these are important when you're talking about indigenous food systems. And I think these are very important differences from contemporary food systems. Thank you.
Clay?
Thank you, and again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here on behalf of the Sichanga Lakota Oyate, or the Rosebud Sioux tribe from South Dakota in the United States. I agree everything with what the doctor said here. In our philosophy, it's always looking at a 7-generation plan of what we're doing. Everything in leadership in the community is done to help benefit the next 7 generations. So the restorative practices, what we were doing, feeding people, nurturing the nature, as you said, was of top priority, and it was basically in everything in our every day of our lives. Our people, for millennia, primarily harvested the bison, or tatanka in our language, and they help keep that harmonious, regenerative part of the ecosystem of the land with us. We are now, starting to get back into that. We have a 1,500 head buffalo ranch on 28,000 acres that we started 3 years ago with much support from World Wildlife Fund. And with that, we are looking at, studying the effects of reintroducing the buffalo onto the land and all of the benefits that are doing it, and it makes our soil much, much healthier. And kind of mainstream Western practices come in. Oh, look, this is great. Maybe we should be doing this. Yes, we were doing this for thousands of years. Imagine that. But really being able to do that, and then getting back to in traditional our ways of the entire community being involved. That's what we're at Sichanguko looking to do. We're with our ranch right now, bringing in children. How do we incorporate the culture? How do we bring back traditional practices back into our way of life and read language, everything, doing that. Not to mention obviously the health benefits for us. After colonization, we were put into government assistance, commodities, giving this extremely unhealthy food, which has been causing horrible diabetes. 60% of our people have diabetes. The health consequences that have been doing them. This is helping doing that. But we're also looking at how do we look at new ways of doing things and growing, and how do we help our people become self-sufficient on growing their own things, not only in communities but also in individuals. But looking at getting that back to that harmony with the ecosystem, with the environment, is so important. And I think us being an example of how we do it and how we can do it, and how other people, especially in America, can look at these practices to become better for the entire environment, for everybody. We don't look at this as just what's good for the Lakota. We look at this as what is good for the world, and how do we share that with everybody. Thank you.
I think we heard from both Dr. Chowdhury and Clay, I think the importance of the holistic aspect, as well as the way in which food systems also looks as the indigenous ways of living, but also caring more holistically for everything that is around us. Can I invite Cristiane on the same question, please?
Ok. Primeiro quero agradecer, acho que agradecer nossa força espiritual, né? A gente esquece de agradecer a quem nos conduz, a quem nos faz acordar, despertar e nos dá força e sabedoria para chegar nesses lugares e ecoar nossas vozes e trazer as vozes de quem ficou nos territórios. Então, obrigada, a minha força encantada por estar aqui, obrigada a vocês por estarem aqui, e essa rede que a gente faz para poder entender que esses sistemas alimentares, a gente alimenta a matéria e alimenta a espiritualidade também, que é fundamental. Mas é isso, assim, acho que a gente precisa estar sempre se policiando, estar sempre revisando de como a gente tem trabalhado a questão da nossa própria alimentação, de como a gente tem permitido que processos industriais ou alimentação industrializada adentre nossos territórios, mesmo com toda a força da colonização, ou mesmo com toda a resistência. Porque isso tem muito a ver com essa forma de pensar o consumo. Como é que nós estamos consumindo o que a gente se alimenta? Como é que a gente está alimentando a nossa matéria? Então, acho que vem muito desse processo de entender o consumo, da pressa em atender, da pressa em trabalhar, e essa pressa que a gente coloca. Porque, pelo menos na época dos meus pais, na minha época mesmo, eu quero ser nova, a pessoa não é. Na minha época de infância, até minha juventude, eu frequentava, eu ia para a roça, eu ia para a lida da agricultura. Mas aí tem uma leitura no Brasil, da minha época, que dizia que para a gente ser gente, a gente tinha que ir para a escola. Para a gente ser visto como uma pessoa, a gente tinha que aprender a ler, tinha que sair desse lugar. Porque ser trabalhador agrícola, lidar com a terra, era sujo, era ceboso, era vergonhoso. Então, a gente tinha que ir para a escola. E eu fui para a escola, eu tive que ir para a escola. Eu tive que me afastar daquilo que me alimentava, da minha espiritualidade, da minha matéria, para ser gente, para ser uma pessoa, para ser vista como uma pessoa. Então, fui estudar, fui aprender a ler, escrever, ler muito, uma educação que me exigia demais, porque eu tinha ainda a minha história de ser indígena, e para deixar de ser indígena também precisava também mudar a forma como eu falava, como eu me colocava, postura, segurar garfo na mão esquerda, garfo na mão direita, aulas de catequese. Então, tudo isso foi rompendo com essa minha colocação. E aí, volto à sua pergunta, porque é justamente isso. O que tem a ver com sistemas alimentares? Tem a ver da forma como a gente absorve essa colonização e se a gente vai se permitir se manter escravizado com esse pensamento, ou se a gente quer voltar para onde a gente é. Depende muito de a gente, se a gente romper o nosso cordão umbilical com a nossa história, com a nossa origem, se a gente quer permanecer nesse lugar de ser gente e deixar e perder nossa essência, perder com o que realmente nos importa e trazer essas transformações desse espaço do ser gente para as nossas realidades, de como isso nos transforma, de como isso transforma a nossa gestão ambiental, a nossa gestão territorial, a nossa gestão social, de como essa desconexão da ideia errônea do que é ser gente, que a gente se desconstrói dos nossos métodos tradicionais de cura da terra, de cura da alma. Eu acho que a gente precisa começar a rever e a revisar nossa forma de pensar o que é ser gente. E eu acho que ser gente é justamente o contrário. É a gente se conectar com aquilo que nos faz ser quem somos. Aquilo que nos alimenta da força que a gente tira da mãe terra. Se a gente acredita realmente que a terra é nossa mãe, se a gente não usa apenas como uma força de expressão, mas sim uma força de ação, absorve isso como sendo a mãe terra, aí sim a gente retoma esse olhar, retoma essa importância do que é ser gente e transforma essas questões de práticas agrícolas, agroecológicas, respeitando a sociobiodiversidade, o tempo de cada coisa, inclusive da própria terra, se regenerar para produzir. Os bens e consumos, não podemos esquecer essa palavra, são bens e recursos naturais. Não são apenas recursos naturais, são bens, são coisas valiosíssimas que a gente está perdendo. A gente precisa recuperar isso o quanto antes e buscar essas conexões, porque o ser gente, se for para ser esse tipo de gente, eu continuo me recusando. Depois que eu me toquei, o que era ser gente, que me induzia a ser, não quero mais não. Vou voltar para o meu território. Prefiro ser a selvagem, prefiro ser a bruta, prefiro ser a roceira, ou enfim, o nome que se dê. Mas eu estou no que é meu, estou com a minha mão cheia de areia e eu sei o que é me alimentar da alma e do espírito e para todo mundo. É isso que eu trago, acho que é isso que a gente precisa começar a retomar o que realmente nos importa. Obrigada.
Muchas gracias. So we just heard from our first three panelists how indigenous food systems and agroecology are different from mainstream or industrial agriculture. I'd like to invite now Pirawan and Marisela, and we'll start with Pirawan because of the incredible work that you're doing with AIPP to share with us some either case studies of examples on how Indigenous peoples communities are using their ancestral knowledge and perhaps combine with modern science to adapt and mitigate the impact on climate change.
Thank you. Nila Rekogade, I'm greeting you in my language. My name and last name may be very difficult for you because that is Thai name, but I do have my indigenous name, which is Pokime. And Pokime is the flower that is growing in the rotational farming, which is part of our food system. And that flower is resilient to the drought and also helping to chase away the insect when they come and attack our crops. So that is the relationship that I want to show that in our people, they normally name the children after the plant, the nature, no? So that's why my name is after the flower. So the indigenous people life is really close relationship with nature, and we see nature as like brother, sister, mother. So we do not harm our own mother, brother, no. And for our culture, when the new baby born, they will cut the umbilical cord of the baby and put in the bamboo and tie with the big healthy tree, and that to say that no one allowed to cut this tree because the soul and the spirit of the baby is with the tree. So this is how you see the conservation system has been established since a long time memorial. Since before this climate talking is started, we've been doing that. And what we are trying to do is we try to revive this thing, no? That to bring back this thing, because many of policy and structural problem is making us, our system, how to say, diluted or like misunderstanding. I just show you one of our documentation that we do about rotational farming. And this is just showcase about the rice biodiversity, no? That in our rotational farming, we used to have more than 30 varieties of rice in the rotational farming. We do not plant only one, but we plant diverse. And each family, we will keep the seed and sharing. Maybe this year you will plant these 3 types. Another year, maybe you will select. And the women playing the crucial role in protecting the seed and decided what crop that we grow. And this variety of rice is provide the resilience and the food security, not only our people, but maybe for the future of this climate. Because this rice growing in different time, using different water resources, and is resilient to the drought. But it's not be valued by the mainstream. We only promote the cash crop that is can feed the people and promote us to use more chemical. But this system, we're not using the chemical. We allow the nature to regenerate and return back. And when we do this kind of practices, we not own the land. We have to pay respect to the nature. And we also have to ask the permission, no? Like, can we use this land or not? And then we also to ensure like the food is not only for the human, but also for the insect, the animal. We ensure that we do not cut down the big tree, okay? So we allow the birds to still come and take the shadow, and then they can rest, and they also can have the food. And one farm, you will see more than 100 species, diverse of the crops. And we will collect the food throughout the years. And even when it becomes the fallow time, you still can collect the food. And those within 7 to 10 years, the forest return again. And in the fallow farm area, when it's generated, it can capture carbon more than the old forest. So we need more research to support this food system, because in Asia, these practices is not only in Thailand, it's in Indonesia, it's in Malaysia, it's in India, it's in Bangladesh. Like in our Asia, this practice, we have practiced more than thousand of years. It's not something like, it's time tested. It's indigenous science. And that is where how we can resilient to this change and we can adapt. But those that blockage us to this resilience is not us, but because they're not recognizing as people. That's why our rights and our right to the land and resources is not in our hand. So we cannot continue this kind of living if these things still continue. So that's why we try to use the documentation, and it's also part of the intergenerational learning, because the youth are come as part of it. They also learn from the elders what are the crops in there and how it's benefit. It's not just only food, it's a medicine, it's the ritual, it's the belief, it's the clothes, no? So they not learn only this is food, you can eat and you grow, you be healthy. No, it's more than that. It's carry our language, it's carry the knowledge, the value together with that. So the youth are more in the using the technology. That's why it's helping in terms of using the computer, noting down, no? And in this village, the women are leading using the GPS mapping, like using the GPS to do the mapping. Where is our herbal area? Where is our vegetable area? and where is we have to do the forest fire. So the whole village will come together and do the mapping, and women also take leading in this. So I'm just sharing the good practices that is happening at the ground, and it needs to be, upscale and re-implicate, so that we will meet whatever discussion in the climate change and biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you just shared with us an incredible sort of way in which food systems, indigenous food systems, are both critical but also sustain ways of living of indigenous people. So we move from Asia now to Latin America. Marisela? Es la misma pregunta.
Bueno, mi nombre pues ya le dijeron, Marisela Fernández, de Costa Rica, y voy a contarle mi experiencia de trabajo en la Asociación de Mujeres Indígenas, y voy a contarles de mi trabajo como los pueblos indígenas y el papel que jugamos las mujeres indígenas, el rol que tenemos en nuestro territorio. En la agricultura somos cuna del conocimiento ancestral y somos los que portamos y enseñamos, traducimos y practicamos la agricultura tradicional. Nosotros tenemos cinco categorías de producción tradicional, la cual hemos venido trabajando. En la primera categoría con huertas, con plantas medicinales, y la segunda categoría con granos básicos, tubérculos, y con la tercera categoría con asociación de cultivos de fincas integrales, y con la cuarta categoría lo que son animales domésticos, y lo que es la quinta categoría, todo lo que es el bosque, la naturaleza, la biodiversidad y ecosistema. Estas prácticas tradicionales es la memoria de nuestros ancestros, es la enseñanza, es de miles y miles de años. Nuestros ancestros han trabajado para conservar y proteger los recursos naturales. Nunca los pueblos indígenas nosotros dañamos el medio ambiente. Nuestra forma de producir la tierra es totalmente diferente. Nosotros conservamos, nosotros protegemos, nosotros defendemos, nosotros sustentamos la tierra. Por eso tenemos, hemos enviado mujeres para que lleven los cursos de agricultura orgánica, para que lleve ese conocimiento tecnológico también para aportar en nuestra asociación, ya que ocupamos también ese conocimiento occidental. Y también somos mujeres que restauramos bosques, los mantos acuíferos donde están las nacientes, también protegemos todo lo que es áreas donde están devastados, estamos restaurando áreas, las cuencas de los ríos, la contaminación del medio ambiente, pues recolección de basura. Trabajamos también en lo que es los animales domésticos, que yo les decía hace rato, de que nosotros producimos todas las categorías que yo mencioné, pero también nuestros animales van a comer de los productos que nosotros estamos produciendo. Entonces, ellos nos van a dar huevo, nos van a dar carne, nos van a dar leche, pero de manera saludable, sin ningún tipo de químicos, porque nuestro abono está en el bosque, el mantillo del bosque. Tenemos también lo que es las abejas para que polinicen los productos que nosotros sembramos. También tenemos lombrices que también nos genera abono orgánico. No lo puedo decir tan así, pero la lombripostura, que llaman las técnicas, donde se hacen abonos orgánicos, donde se enseñan a las familias a producir de manera sostenible con el medio ambiente, una soberanía alimentaria que garantice alimento diario para la familia. En tiempo de la pandemia, nosotras producimos alimento. Nosotras, aunque se dio la contención comunal, nosotros pudimos darle alimento hasta en la ciudad, llevando productos orgánicos de nosotros mismos, de nuestro territorio, y no hubo escasez de productos. Y también en medicina, la ciudad llenaron los hospitales, nosotros no, nosotros con plantas medicinales, nosotros pudimos contrarrestar estos ataques del COVID-19. Entonces, esa experiencia, ese conocimiento, esa práctica está en nuestro territorio. Nosotros lo vivimos, nosotros lo practicamos y cada día tenemos que trabajar para seguir conservando más nuestro conocimiento. Por eso hoy le hago un llamado a todas aquellas personas que quisieran aportar a nuestros pueblos indígenas, territorios indígenas, organizaciones de mujeres indígenas, que aporten directamente a las organizaciones, porque ahí es donde está el génesis de conocimiento ancestral. Hay mucha gente que están por otros medios llevando recursos y no están trabajando como lo estamos haciendo nosotros. Nosotros sí somos de veramente guardianes del bosque, conservadores del medio ambiente, de la biodiversidad, del ecosistema, de la fauna, y somos defensoras 100%. Nosotros somos capaces de dar la vida por nuestros recursos naturales y lo defendemos porque es el conocimiento, es la práctica, es la vivencia diaria, es el idioma, lo enseñamos a nuestros hijos, la cosmovisión le enseñamos a nuestros hijos, las prácticas se viven, no es algo que alguien lo escuché, no, sino que lo vivo dentro de mi pueblo. Yo sé lo que es trabajar en los viveros y sé lo que es vender tamales, lo que es vender comida para pagar transporte, para llevar árboles a las comunidades, para sembrar, para poder diversificar las parcelas de las compañeras, de las familias y poder garantizar una seguridad alimentaria a la familia, pero de una manera sana y saludable sin contaminar el medio ambiente. Nosotros defendemos 100% el ambiente, por eso hoy digo que sumémonos a defender este planeta, con un paisaje verde, con una mejor conciencia. Salvemos al planeta, juntos vamos a lograrlo. Si nosotros tenemos diferentes ideas, no vamos a lograr el objetivo, porque todos podemos hacer algo por ella, todos podemos salvarlo. Pero si todos hablamos el mismo idioma y todos vamos por el mismo objetivo. Eso sería. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. I think we just had like really two incredible testimonies of how Indigenous peoples are not only defenders, but also knowledge holders in which they live every day, traditional knowledge, but also do it in a way that is just, I think, to use the word that is used in other spaces, circular or holistic. But I'd like to move now because I know time is short, and I want to see if we can leave room for questions. And I'd like to direct this next question to Christiani, Drupad, and Pierawan. I'd like to ask you, we are in this COP space with many partners, the stakeholders, including also philanthropy. I'd like to ask, from the spaces that you're working or the advocacy that you're doing, what recommendations does your organizations have to building more solidarity with Indigenous peoples in the run-up to the 6th meeting of the Conference of Parties on the CBD, or the Convention on Biological Diversity, future climate COPs, or any regional processes where decisions about food systems are impacting Indigenous peoples' communities? I don't know who would like to take that question first.
Já estou com o microfone, vou responder. Bem, a gente tem que pensar bem nisso, né? Porque a gente o Brasil, ele é conhecido como agronegócio, né? O país do agronegócio, ele tem tentado se firmar com uma ideia do agronegócio. A nossa discussão no Brasil sobre a questão territorial paira sobre esse tema, exatamente, de como nossos territórios não estão sendo reconhecidos ou estão sendo destruídos em função dessa demanda que o agronegócio do Brasil tem se colocado na produção do gado, na produção da soja, da produção do milho, enfim, e outras situações que vêm acontecendo. Então, a gente tem tentado fazer uma conversa sensibilizando nesse cenário aqui do que está acontecendo no Brasil, sobretudo. A gente está numa discussão sobre marco temporal, onde o Congresso Nacional entende que a nossa existência começa a vigorar praticamente em 88. Então, quer dizer que a história do Brasil é mentirosa. Eles estão dizendo, estão se negando na própria história, quando fala que em 22 de abril de 1500 começou a colonização no Brasil. E agora a nossa existência foi de 88. Então, o quê? Bordou, foi plim, 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 a magiquinha que chegou lá. E aí a gente está discutindo a questão territorial, está discutindo esses sistemas, porque, como a parenta falou, nós realmente temos outra forma de lidar com o território. A gente não está pensando na ideia do consumo para estocagem. A gente está pensando no consumo para o agora, para respeitar o tempo da terra. Né? A gente não está pensando em usar, por exemplo, tratores para compilar o solo e depois ele ter um problema de regeneração. A gente usa, pelo menos, arado. A gente tem o tempo de pensar que esse tempo de colheita, ou como disse o calendário agrícola, que a gente sabia os regimes de chuva, sabia o tempo de cada produção, para poder plantar o milho, o feijão, as frutas, as abelhas se recolher, as abelhas se fecundar, as abelhas garantir o fruto durante todo o ano, isso a gente não tem mais. Porque a gente está disputando com o agronegócio. A gente está disputando com legislações que tem disseminado o uso extensivo de agrotóxico, que tem matado toda a nossa biodiversidade como um todo. Não só as abelhas, mas também a questão dos recursos hídricos, a questão do lixo, como a parenta falou, que nossos territórios estão sendo usados como despejo desse lixo, e aí vem chorume, aí vem outras coisas, enfim, que não está só no território, mas também está indo para os mares. Então, são várias situações que a gente tem lidado. A APIB, a Articulação dos Povos Indígenas do Brasil, chega nessa conferência aqui, já porque está todo mundo de olho na COP30, ninguém falou da COP do ano que vem. Ano que vem tem conferência, tem ainda a conferência 29, tem conferência da biodiversidade, a 16ª conferência de biodiversidade, que acontece a cada 2 anos. Tem a reunião que vai estar discutindo propriedade intelectual, mas a gente não participa dessa discussão. A gente só está aqui falando sobre mudança do clima, quando a base da discussão da mudança do clima, a essência da discussão da mudança do clima é biodiversidade. A gente não está falando sobre biodiversidade, falando de mudança do clima. Mas uma coisa não existe sem a outra. É fundamental que nós possamos ocupar, da mesma forma que a gente vem ocupando conferências sobre mudanças climáticas, na Conferência da Biodiversidade. Para a gente falar dos nossos conhecimentos tradicionais, de como preservar, conservar, manter, regenerar a natureza a partir dos nossos conhecimentos tradicionais, e que toda e qualquer produção, toda e qualquer comercialização a partir dos nossos saberes tem que haver repartição justa e equitativa desse lucro bruto, do valor bruto, não é do líquido, não, valor bruto, para que a gente possa continuar trabalhando processos e projetos de mitigação dentro dos nossos territórios e que a gente garanta uma soberania alimentar e nutricional para gerações que estão chegando, porque as que se foram morreram na luta, morreram lutando, e nós temos esse legado. Eu acho que é essa mensagem que a gente traz para a conferência 28.
Gracias.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Very quickly, I think what we need to recognize is perhaps I would start from the CBD's resolution 8J and ask the question that we need to look at how we can provide a mechanism to translate that into reality. 8J talks about, protection or recognition and protection of indigenous people's knowledge, their practices and so on. But we haven't really seen a translation of that on the ground. So a mechanism needs to be looked into. I think another important aspect is recognizing or supporting that what you require is not only science-based evidence, but you require knowledge to include the indigenous knowledge together with science, scientific knowledge. The third area which is very important is building up cadres of indigenous peoples' youth as advocates and as champions of not only taking the knowledge forward, but also of the rights that you were talking about. I think these are three very important areas where we need to concentrate to help take this into CBD, into UNFCCC and the other forums as well, and to take these objectives forward. Thank you.
Okay, the reason why indigenous people here, because our right has been taken away. The decision making is not including us. That's why we are here. That is first thing. And the solution, the decision that making come back to our national level and local level, that is violating our rights. That's why we cannot survive. That's why we cannot resilient. That's why we cannot continue our indigenous knowledge. Because our roots, our identity related to our land, territory, and resources. And the human rights-based approach is the first key step of the walk, not a talk. It's really powerless in the document, and we need more stronger human rights language in this convention and other convention as well. Because you cannot protect this world if you're going to kill the one who protect the remain 80% of biodiversity. That one is the first step. Indigenous people, we have self-determination and we have close relationship with nature. We know how the nature change. We know how to deal with it. But we never be part of those designs. The monitoring, the planning, those things we never be part. And whatever is always come from the top down, and that is not respond to our agenda, our needs. That is, we need to change. Number of times we request indigenous people in the governance body to be part of decision making, but it's still, we not see that. The resources that said they agree that we give to indigenous people, until now, we still not feel it. I won't say I see it or not, but I still don't feel it. That's why we always demand the direct access fund for indigenous people, and we continue demanding that. Because we have proven that we are the best guardian to protect these natural resources. And why cannot we deserve that yet? Why we have to use the deserve when you are doing that already? We did not ask for compensation because the compensation cannot compensate my knowledge, my culture, my language. The money cannot recover that. The money cannot take my brother, sister who lost their life for protecting that land. And the just transition, how do you make sure that the renewable energy will not come again to extract our natural resources in the indigenous people land? So these are the 4 key points that I really, to take everyone, whether you are a advocate, you are donor, you are government, you are negotiator, please take this with you. I cannot enter those negotiation rooms. Even I try, but sometimes it limit with the space. So I hope those who have decision making, they can open more space for indigenous people to be able also to be that part of negotiation, to show our solution. We are not victim, we are not vulnerable, we are not beneficiary, but we are here to make the change together with you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I'll just take a moment to add, this is my first COP, and I've been I've been following with interest all these conversations on just transitions and heard some governments on how they are defining just transition. And I want to just mention, I think there is no just transition without Indigenous peoples' rights. Anything short of that is not just transition. And there's no just transition without an Indigenous person or Indigenous group of people at the table negotiating solutions. And I also want to add that direct access to funding does not mean that a non-Indigenous organization creates or applies on behalf of Indigenous peoples to fund or create a mechanism for direct access. I think what we are all talking about is direct access to funding means going directly, being negotiated, managed, and guided by Indigenous people, not someone else doing that work for them. I'd like to now invite Clay and Marisela to share maybe some final recommendations from your experiences. Maybe Clay from the nations that you represent, and Marisela from the organization that she also represents. Any final words?
Yeah, very powerful statements here. Thank you so much for that. Again, with my tribe specifically and other Indigenous people tribes in America, it is having that seat at the table. Us directing how we know how to take care of our land, of our food, of our people, being able to sit at that table for more than a century. We haven't been at that table, and the policies of the U.S. government, whether people want to admit it or not, were there to eliminate us, and we're still here. We haven't gone anywhere. We're still here. We're still trying to do the same thing. Outside people have come in wanting to help, and help with the way they know how, trying to force the way they want us to live on us. And it's not the way we want to live. We never have. But we're a proud people. We're a resilient people. We're still here despite all of that. We did that. And now, thanks to, I think our resilience and, other organizations that have come in to help us, realizing that, look, we have so much to offer. We have all this knowledge. It was good for the land then. It's good for the land now. And it's good for not only our people, but everybody. And, if you're going to come in to, to assist Indigenous people, listen. Come and listen, learn. What are they wanting to do? How are they doing it? What do they have to offer? Not that you can't offer outside help. There's, ways to improve things, and we'll be open to that. But don't come in and say, I can solve all your problems for you. That's the end of the conversation right there. Come in with an open mind. Come in, with a good heart, and come in as partners. Let us do things for ourselves the way we want to, the way we have for centuries, for millennia. It's, it's better for everybody that way. And it's, it's going to yield results. It's going to yield partnerships. It's going to create new opportunities that none of us, probably even know that are down the road. But, I am very hopeful about that. Again, Rockefeller World Wildlife Federation coming in and doing that and letting us do it and seeing the success that we did and the buy-in from us, letting us, bringing in funding that we desperately need, but allowing us to control that, not have all these metrics and things that we need to do not set by us. That it hasn't worked for a century. It's not going to work. But when it's forced upon us. But when you look at the momentum that I think I've seen over the last decade or two on that, it's very promising, and I am very hopeful on it. So again, not that the help isn't wanted or needed, but don't come and try to force it on Indigenous peoples of something that you think will fix their problem. Come and we can do this together, but listen. I can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Yo quiero decir que nosotros en los territorios indígenas, el gobierno central, bueno, pues casi todos los parques nacionales están en los territorios indígenas. Y nosotros somos los que estamos cuidando los parques nacionales. Y también los recursos cuando llegan por por pago de reducciones de emisiones o de pago de servicio por resultados, somos los que recibimos la migaja más pequeño de estos porcentajes. ¿Por qué? Porque hay tanta burocracia del gobierno que los indígenas tienen que hacer esto y hay una gran política de que no nos permite nosotros acceder a los recursos. Entonces, el territorio indígena que no hace un buen plan de trabajo y no tiene acompañamiento técnico en este tema, pues no pueden acceder a los recursos. ¿Por qué? Porque hay una gran política de gobierno de que nosotros tenemos, y si nosotros lo hemos demostrado al mundo, a la humanidad, que somos los mejores conservadores y protectores del medio ambiente, de la naturaleza, de todo lo que he mencionado acá, pero aún así, cuando hay recursos no somos tomados en cuenta. Y si nos toman en cuenta, nos pide un sinfín de requisitos que no nos hace acceder a esos recursos. Y por eso hemos trabajado siempre a honoring. Nuestro trabajo ha sido a honoring porque por naturaleza nosotros hemos sido conservadores y protectores y siempre lo vamos a seguir haciendo, con o sin, vamos a seguir trabajando, defendiendo nuestro territorio. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos se quedan con la plata, pues tal el ministerio de tal, tanto, y quédense con la plata. Nosotros vamos a seguir trabajando y conservando y protegiendo nuestros recursos naturales.
We have just a few minutes before we have to leave the room. I want to just open it for any questions that the audience may have. I do have one question, if I may, if there's no other one with questions. I think, Clay, you just touched on something in your final recommendation about for coming with different metrics that are brought by sometimes funders, but sometimes government partners. So I just wanted to just also maybe touch, and if this is to anyone, the question of the importance also of using indigenous researchers. And maybe both in the context of food systems, but also in the context of the work that you are all doing. So maybe you can just touch on that.
Yes, thank you. Very, very good question. In the success stories I say that we see, it's, even in funders or government agencies coming in again, not with, here's what we want to see, here's what we see as success. It is, again, just part of that conversation of sitting down, what do you see as success? Sometimes maybe you can incorporate, some of it. There's something to be learned from everybody. But again, that conversation of what does success look like for you? There's agencies, people coming in, and we want to come help, and this is how we see help. Or this is what we see as success, and that didn't align with us. But having that, and also, indigenous researchers, that's what we're doing, the younger generations coming up, getting, educated in this and being able to track the progress and do it, I think is critical as well. So I think that's great. But again, not just, okay, you can do this, but how does that fit into what we feel is success? What does that success look like for you? What are your goals? Has to be, paramount at the end of the conversation.
Anyone quickly for like just a minute?
Yeah, sorry. I think we need more like working on the ground evidence and produced by our own indigenous people. And it's not only benefit for our advocacy work, but even for the knowledge transferring to the young generation people. And when I return the book back to the community, they feel proud, they feel happy, and they said, this is our work, like the ownership is there, and you feel proud, like it's not from any researcher, it's from us, like who doing together. So they feel very proud, and when they are visitors, they also show, and people from outside also appreciate, like, oh, you get recognized, like, oh, you do this by your own, like that, no? So for the funding, it's just the mean or the tool, but the real, benefit is to the community people, how they want to use it, how they want to develop their own plan. No? From this small document is starting another new idea of the community people, how they want to work, continue on it. And they even thinking like they want to do other, how to say, this kind of book. It can be a comic book or something like the young people can learn and also continue the value together. And as I mentioned before, it's really the international learning is very critical and it's also produced in their own language. I only bring the Thai version and English, which is in the one packet, but we also have the local language that is in indigenous language. So I think we have to promote more for this kind of work, and it should be expanding, replicate, and need more support on this also. Thank you.
Very, very quickly, I think a principle that we need to bring in, and an innovation, if you like, is the intercultural approach for building the capacity of young researchers, both of the indigenous people, because it's important that even among the indigenous youth now, there's a lot of knowledge which is being lost because of the changes which is coming about. So intergenerational learning, intercultural, because people from non-indigenous communities need to also understand and appreciate. And that's that exchange of knowledge which is very important. And here I think we need to look at the whole concept of what knowledge is about. And knowledge is not just scientific knowledge or Western knowledge. There's a whole indigenous knowledge which is there. And that's science as well. And how do we synergize that too? So that approach, I think, those principles become very, very important.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question. Yes.
Right. I just wanted to mention something that I think is on some people's mind, but reflects mostly what's happening in my country. There is corruption in the system. We have a vicious circle that we don't know exactly how to break it. The government controls money coming to indigenous peoples' projects because they say there is a lot of corruption. So how, and the people, indigenous people say too much bureaucracy, but we are in this negative circle, vicious circle, that we have to find out ways on how to break it, because it is a lose-lose situation.
Can we take one more in the back, I think?
Hello everyone, my name is Enrique. I'm from Rapa Nui. And I have a question for Maricela. Hola. Tengo una pregunta. ¿Cómo ustedes, qué sistema tienen ustedes para cuando hay tiempo de sequía?
Bueno, en tiempo de sequía nosotros ya hemos pasado, no tal vez no es tan extremo, pero sí lo hemos vivido. En tiempo de sequía hay un reglamento interno de los mayores del conocimiento de que nosotros no podemos estar haciendo quema, ni mucho menos tenemos que tener más gente de la comunidad cuidando todas las riberas de los ríos donde hay caña blanca, caña brava, no sé cómo le dicen. Son plantas que pueden agarrar fuego inmediatamente, cuidando los lugares, tirando mensajes por medio de comunicación por una emisora local, de poder no darle fósforo o cosas que puedan dar incendio en la comunidad, pero es de la forma cultural. No tenemos gente preparada para incendios, para poder apagar los incendios que se dé, por ejemplo, solamente con conocimiento cultural tratamos de capacitar y de orientar a la juventud de que estamos en un momento de sequía, no hay agua, pero no podemos darle a los niños, enseñarle a los niños no utilizar o no llevar fósforo, cosas que pueda hacer quemas grandes de incendios.
And did anyone wanted to address your question on corruption and the government's absorbing money?
O governo absorvendo grana.
Yo sí quisiera responderle al compañero de que sí, eso se escucha, pero yo lo que sí quisiera decirle es que yo creo que debe haber, ojalá, recurso para poder fortalecer, darle un fortalecimiento institucional a las organizaciones de base. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos dicen que nosotros, si nunca nos han dado, ¿en qué corrupción vamos a tener? Ellos son expertos tal vez para eso, pero nosotros somos expertos para conservar. Pero lo que pasa es que no hemos tenido la capacitación, el manejo de financiamiento, de recursos. Entonces, no sabemos, entonces ellos claro que se van a quedar con la plata, se queda con todo el recurso, porque nosotros no le estamos planteando una propuesta, porque nuestro trabajo nunca ha sido por intereses, ha sido, como dije, a honoren. Entonces no sabemos hacer una política al gobierno que vaya, que le caiga fuerte, sino que es una debilidad que tenemos nosotros en los territorios indígenas. Entonces siento que sí debe haber fortalecimiento institucional desde la base, conociendo la parte de administración, la parte técnica, la parte financiera, la parte de monitoreo, todo eso de campo, trabajo de campo, también para los guardarrecursos, pues allá en Costa Rica le decimos los guardarrecursos, los guardas que conservan los bosques, fortalecerlo, equiparlo con tecnología, con muchas cosas más para que la gente también tenga conocimiento, los pueblos indígenas tengan ese conocimiento que tienen ellos, que también nosotros lo podemos tener y somos más todavía que estamos volando porque sabemos ese conocimiento desde nuestros ancestros, ¿verdad? No es algo que a mí yo lo tengo que ir a aprender en una universidad o en una escuela, no, es un conocimiento ancestral.
Thank you very much, and we're going to have to close because I know there's going to be another panel coming in. If you can please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you for your time.